The early morning fog lay thick over Mill Creek Valley, rolling like slow breath across the empty fields and smothered fences. For miles, the earth whispered silence. But that silence was deceiving. It was the kind that waits just before a scream. Deputy Mark Holloway tightened his grip on the steering wheel as his cruiser rolled down the gravel path leading to a long-abandoned farm. It had been listed for foreclosure, and someone at the county office had flagged it for inspection due to a complaint, though no name had been attached to the report. These kinds of calls rarely amounted to anything, especially not in forgotten parts of the county. But protocol was protocol. Rex, his German Shepherd canine partner, sat calmly in the back seat, ears perked, nose twitching at the cracked window. Mark had worked with him for 6 years. They'd been through floods, fires, and drug busts together. Rex was steady, never overreactive. But something about this place had him uneasy. Mark noticed it the second they turned off the main road. The dog's breathing had grown heavier, his body tense. Now, as they parked in front of the sun-washed, leaning barn, Rex began whining, a low, anxious sound Mark had only ever heard once before, during a missing child search that ended with a body under a collapsed bridge. Before Mark could even step out, Rex lunged against the kennel door, barking wildly. Confused, Mark opened the back. Rex shot out like a bullet, not toward the house, but the barn. Its doors cracked open just enough to let the faintest shaft of light slice through the dust inside. The wooden structure groaned in the wind, as if warning them away. But Rex had made up his mind. He slammed his front paws against the doors, barking with such intensity that Mark's heart kicked into high gear. He drew his flashlight and weapon, called for backup, and followed his partner inside. Sunlight filtered through the slats of wood, illuminating the dust like ash floating in the air. Inside, the barn smelled of mildew, decay, and something else, something metallic. Rex was already clawing at a rotting patch of floorboards near the center. Beneath the layer of dirt and straw, Mark saw it, an old trapdoor, slightly ajar. Rex growled, then looked back at him with pleading eyes. Mark pried it open. The creaking of the hinges echoed like a scream. A narrow staircase descended into blackness. The beam of his flashlight cut through the dark, and then he saw them. Eyes. Dozens of them. Small. Hollow. Terrified. 31 children, chained like animals in a space no bigger than a root cellar. They didn't speak. They didn't cry. They just stared. What came next was chaos, controlled, professional, but emotionally harrowing. Backup arrived. EMTs descended the stairs. Firefighters brought in stretchers. The children, some barely 5 years old, were skeletal, filthy, bruised. Many didn't have names. Others whispered fragments of stolen identities. They had been abducted from nearby towns, from across state lines. Some had been missing for weeks. Others for years. All of them had vanished without a trace until now. That day shattered something inside Mark. He had seen pain before, but never like this. And yet, at the center of that nightmare stood Rex. Calm, unwavering. He didn't bark anymore. He simply sat at the edge of the cellar door, refusing to move, watching over the hole like a soldier guarding sacred ground. In the days that followed, the investigation unfolded like a twisted web. The barn, it turned out, had once been owned by a local family who disappeared mysteriously 10 years ago. Since then, it had passed through shell companies and false ownerships. It was being used by a multi-state human trafficking ring that used rural properties to hide kidnapped children. The barn was one of several sites. Rex's instinct had uncovered the first domino in a devastating chain. The media was kept silent, too many variables, too many risks. But the departments involved knew the truth. And inside the safe walls of a pediatric trauma facility, 31 children began to heal. The real miracle came afterward. None of the children would speak to officers or therapists. Not one. But then Rex visited. His first visit was unplanned. He accompanied Mark during a welfare check. As soon as he entered the room, one little girl, barely 6, stood up and walked straight to him. She knelt down, wrapped her arms around his neck, and whispered something no one else could hear. After that, the dam broke. Slowly, others followed. They cried into Rex's fur. They touched his ears, his paws, his back. With him, they were safe. With him, they told stories of hidden rooms, of dark vans, of faceless men. Rex became their therapist, their protector, their anchor. Mark watched it all unfold with awe and pain. He had always respected the bond between dogs and people, but now he witnessed something deeper, something spiritual. Rex wasn't just a dog anymore. He was a lifeline. As the weeks turned to months, Rex's visits became daily rituals. The children began speaking to therapists again, but only if Rex was present. They painted pictures of barns and monsters, but always with a brave dog standing in the corner. Some of them even smiled. They began to remember who they were. Where they came from. The authorities used their statements to raid 4 more sites across the country. 17 more children were rescued. Over 40 arrests were made. And through it all, Rex remained the heartbeat behind every breakthrough. A dog who refused to leave when his instincts told him something was wrong. Eventually, word of Rex's heroism spread quietly through law enforcement channels. He was awarded the department's highest honor. News outlets begged for interviews. But Mark refused the fanfare. He didn't do this for praise, he said once in a closed meeting. He did it because he knew. And he couldn't walk away. But time, as it always does, moved forward. Years later, many of those rescued children found homes, adopted by loving families, fostered into safe environments. A few never found the words to talk about what they went through. But they all remembered the dog who saved them. Rex retired 2 years after the barn raid. Arthritis slowed his steps, but he still visited the children when he could. On his last visit, one of the oldest survivors, now 17, wheeled herself up beside him and placed a medal around his neck. It wasn't official. Just a ribbon with a metal charm shaped like a heart. She said nothing, but tears ran down her cheeks. Rex licked her hand. A year later, Rex passed away in his sleep. Mark buried him under the tree behind his house, the one Rex always napped beneath. A small plaque reads, "He heard what others couldn't. He stayed when others ran. He saved what others forgot." If this story has stirred your soul, if it made you feel something deep in your heart, please consider liking this video, subscribing to Pawsitive Tales, and sharing this story. There are still lost voices in the world. And maybe, just maybe, one act of kindness, one loyal heart, can find them. Before you go, leave a comment below. If Rex were still here, what would you say to him? Let's fill this space with the words he can no longer hear, but the world still needs to feel.